Hello and welcome to Sean White's Solar and Energy Storage Podcast.
Today, our special guest is James Showalter, and James is the founder and CEO of EG4. EG4 is well known in the industry. In fact, I have EG4 conditioning the room that I'm in right now. I have one of your really cool mini splits. I think it's the 2-ton version, the bigger one. And it can take a string of solar, and we don't have the solar hooked up to it yet. So right now it's just working off of AC electricity. And one side of the building is one part of the unit. The other part is on the other side of the building. We ran it underneath the floor, and it's just pretty cool. And I think that it's so cool that you could just run a string of PV right to your mini split. So thanks for making that possible, James.
No problem, Sean. That's what we love to do in pursuit of what we're trying to achieve here, which is energy generation for everyone. That's where EG4 gets its name from.
Oh, that's what it is. I didn't even know that. Energy generation for everyone. That's pretty cool. Yeah, and actually I have 3 of those mini splits too, and they're all installed right now. So
I'm on a customer plan call right now.
Yeah, you are. I know. And unfortunately, I don't have any complaints, or maybe that's fortunate for you. So yeah, so thanks for coming on and talking to us. And I believe, are you in Texas? I think that's where your headquarters is. So great.
Yeah, Sean. We started about in a small town of 17,000, about an hour and a half outside of Dallas.
Great.
So for most people, we say we're from Dallas, but actually a little town called Sulfur Springs, which
Sulfur
is the farming community I grew up in. Yeah.
Oh, cool. So actually, I'm living on some property that I grew up on too, and it's got some sulfur going on in the water too. And some of the people living out here don't like that sulfur smell, and I'm trying to upsell it, and maybe I'll call it like Sulfur Springs. I remember there was this hot tub place that I went to that was up in Northern California, and it smelled like, really strong sulfur. And they promoted it. I think it might even have been called Sulfur Springs or something like that. It's a kind of a good name.
Yeah, that healing mineral water scam in the 1880s was kind of the thing. Like Sulfur Springs, Texas used to be called Bright Star. And then they found some sulfur in the water, and they realized marketing-wise we could start attracting people here. They changed the name on that 150 years ago.
Yeah, maybe it is good for you,
Could be. It was definitely the rage.
Yeah. So one of the things that people sometimes complain about is they say it smells like some kind of egg thing. And we're like, it's really good for you. People that live here are used to it and they don't even know the difference. I kind of grew up with it, So what's happening over there at EG4?
Yeah. So a lot of things are happening. I think, one of the biggest things we got in the paper with the partnership for American Supplied Cells from LG. So we've got a 13.5 gigawatt hour allocation over the next 5 years. Starting in 2026, we'll provide domestic content. Residential batteries should be about 2 gigawatt hours next year. This year, we comfortably broke the 1 gigawatt hour range. I think, probably report that publicly. I know a lot of the public companies have to report that in their quarterlies as to how much they're doing. But I think that our battery volume should put us in the number 2 spot comfortably for the United States in batteries this year.
Congratulations. Wow. That's pretty cool. One thing that I was looking into is I wanted to have some way to charge a battery and then run the inverter off the battery and have something where I'm not really connected to the grid. And somebody was telling me that you had something like that like a battery charger or something that would make it so it would be impossible to backfeed the grid. Like I could charge the batteries from the grid, sort of like an off-grid system, but then have a way to charge batteries.
We've got a lot of people actually doing systems like that in California right now and in Texas. And they're using our smaller whole-home inverter, which is the FlexBoss 18 inverter, which has a charge rate of 10 kilowatts and output power if you have solar available at 13. But of course, you don't have solar, it's at 10. And it's a UL 3141 inverter, so you can plug it into your breaker panel and put the CTs on the main wires and not have to upgrade your breaker panel. So you could just plug the battery into your breaker panel, plug the inverter into your breaker panel on the AC side, and then you can use our wall mount batteries, which the integrated monitoring and control system gives you full control and access to. Just pick if you need 1, 2, 3 of them. Look at your total energy usage that you want to arbitrage over from those nights or hours. You just look at your hourly usage, and you can do that already. And that's something we're seeing people in the DIY space actually do, and in the long tail installer space do.
Yeah, because I think there's like kind of a demand for people to sort of have what we might even call like an off-grid system with grid backup, where all you ever use the grid for is to top off your batteries every once in a while. And you might go for days without grid, but if you just have like, some dark months and things like that, you can use the grid for that.
That's the goal. With a battery system and solar integrated, try to make 95% of your kilowatt hours never have happened as far as the grid is concerned, or happen all behind the meter.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
The grid becomes a backup source of power that's focused on those edge cases like you're referring to, Sean. Mm-hmm. And I think a lot of people are starting to adopt and live that out with our products. That's really, I think, the format, which is a 95 to 100% self-consumption plan. Mm-hmm. Just make your own energy, store it, and then utilize it. And then your grid is essentially a backup generator.
Great.
The real variable for homeowners tends to be actually what level of backup do you want in the case of the grid outage? And of course, the fact that the grid's becoming more unreliable is starting to really create a lot more interest and incentive to up the expectations there from a homeowner side.
Yeah, and then also, like, people are trying to bring down the cost of solar, and people are always complaining about the cost of the bureaucracy, or in times where the utility is just not going to give you an interconnection agreement. And anytime you're hooking up a piece of equipment to the grid that has the potential by design through programming to feed the grid, even though if you program it to never feed the grid, if you ever have that potential where it could, if somebody, hacked it or something like that, then in that case, all of a sudden it's like, here's a stack of paperwork and the utility could tell you no. But if you just had a way just to only charge batteries, that's just a load. Like, it's only a load. It's in no way is it a source. And that way you could not have to worry about interconnection agreements.
Yeah, Sean, I think we're looking at really executing a regulatory plan on that problem over the next couple of years. To your point, categorically, the utility can try to stake an interest that is like an interfering level of interest or just debilitating level of interest in, whether there's a potential for a small export or something from your power electronics. So if your house has a 200 amp disconnect hardware solution, whether it's something like a grid boss or a meter collar that'll work for inverters, there should be a UL standard that could exist that basically says that the solar only produces power when the grid is disconnected by a physical switch. Yeah. And the reason why that needs to exist is because at the core fundamentals that go way back before even the PUCs in each of these different state markets, we did live in a reality when the concept of private property was being created that's enshrined in the Constitution. We lived in a reality where people lived off of their own energy that they generated. Actually, frankly, most private property was associated with the space you needed to feed your horses, which is your means of transportation, and heat and cook and power your house. A couple acres of wood and 5 acres of oats got you there.
That's all energy, all those things.
Right. That was the right of a private property owner to furnish energy without interference by the public market was very well understood. And I think that when technology makes that possible again, I think about 600 pounds of lithium and 400 square feet of solar panels can create that reality again. We need to be able to, I think, prepare for redefining that legal position that we always had and that we never agreed to have go away from us. It would have probably taken something constitutional to redefine that because it was an implied definition at the time to where, if we can scientifically or have a standard that proves that, hey, we have the right to use our own energy on our own property. Even the PUC covenants that created a government monopoly on energy do not override the implied self-right to energy generation. So I think that, we are probably one technical standard away from being able to fit in the category of truly, private energy generation. and then come into that with a property right assertion that could help us demystify a lot of this.
Great, great. Are you talking about like federal laws and things like that, I guess? Is that?
I think the key thing, no, I think the legal chassis is already there, right? And it's less of a federal law approach. I don't think we have to go at energy generation from waiting for permission from anybody. I think we just need to demonstrate that we are not on the utility company's network, whether that is a MID 200 amp smart breaker in your house that disconnects you from the grid, or a third party automatic transfer MID device. We have to just technologically demonstrate that the hardware we're installing is not grid parallelable and only operates when the grid's disconnected. And then I think that you leverage in those hard markets of, grid obstructionism, you leverage the traditional right to private energy generation and utilization.
Yep, great. Yeah, and so it seemed to me too, like if you have equipment that does have these extra capabilities to backfeed the grid, that the utilities could always get their attorneys out there and question that. But if you just had a piece of equipment that was essentially a battery charger and nothing more than that, then they couldn't really say anything. It's just like,
yeah, that's kind of the thing. How do you set a technological category? I think it might even, I'd go as far as to, like I say, have a brake switch that is tied to your inverter as well, right? Where basically you cannot, be connected to the grid while you're producing power.
Okay.
So you can use the grid as a backup or not in a battery charge mode. So yeah, I think that standard, as the core technologies just ultimately hit a cost breakpoint, that standard something that should be developed and something we will think about and that should be leveraged in, because I think that if we had to test the right of private property owners to make their own power at any level on a legal standpoint, I think that would more than hold up.
Okay.
We interrupt you for a very important announcement. Sean White's Solar and Energy Storage Podcast has been brought to you by Sean White's Solar and Energy Storage Podcast. That's right, Sean White is sponsoring his own podcast, and he wants to remind you to go check out some of his classes. You can go to SolarSEAN, that's Solar, SEAN.com, and then click on the links to check out his classes. You can check out his heat spring classes, and you can also hire him to teach classes for you, like at your company, something like that. Now back to the show.
And so you are one of the big suppliers of energy storage for, at least for residential, perhaps number 2 this year out of, I guess, the whole United States. So that's pretty impressive. And I know that a lot of people like EG4 products, like regular installers and even like the do-it-yourselfers too, because the price is also good too. So it's kind of got a good reputation for price and quality. So maybe you could talk a little bit about the price. It's like what we could talk about, the levelized cost of storage, like how many cents per kilowatt hour perhaps, or maybe some other metrics.
So where we're at right now, when you talk about levelized cost of storage, obviously our theme is energy generation. So we try to allocate in a solar generation element to what we're doing in terms of our core target as a company. But where I lead the team on is the actual core mission of EG4, which this may sound a little bit mathematical, but we want to make energy 10 cents a kilowatt hour again. And we want to do it with energy generation and energy storage at homes. And we are going to, on that path, when we say 10 cents a kilowatt hour, we mean the total cost of ownership, the cost of finance. We look at it like 25-year package. What's the cost of hardware, cost of finance, cost of labor, cost of O&M, cost of customer acquisition. How do we get to a stack where even without subsidies, we can turn into an average of 10 cents a kilowatt hour or less? And how do we factor in also the reliability factor, which I think what's going to hit a premium on the grid as the natural gas market is peaking. So holistically solve that. And on the way to that target, and us really trying to be a part of demonstrating that and vertically integrating as necessary, we are charging a standardized margin. We're not margin opportunists in the business. So we're not going to charge as much as we can get. We're going to charge as much as we need in our pursuit of that goal, which is to turn the energy price crisis around and have it head back down using the storage and generation technology progress we have there.
Cool. Well, thanks for doing that and making it possible for more people to get renewable energy, solar energy and storage and all that. And I know that you also are for not just founding EG4, but for Signature Solar. And maybe you could talk about, the relationship of EG4 to Signature Solar.
Yeah, Sean. We actually started Signature Solar a little earlier than EG4 back in 2019. It was kind of a one-man shop. Got my dad to work for me as well, a couple brothers. Back in 2019, we started as an eBay store where I had run an installation company for 5 years before that as a professional installer. And I would buy more hardware than I needed, trying to get a better price on the stuff. And then I started selling the hardware off, the extra hardware off online. And then I would provide support services to the people that were buying it. And I realized just how much I loved talking about solar for other people's projects and just being a part of a lot of people's projects instead of just pigeonholing to the capacity I had as an installer. So I started Signature by giving away my install company to my younger brother, and he's grown it and very successful, very proud of him out here in rural Northeast Texas, Signatech Solar. He did copy my name. And I started the distribution company, and I said I wanted to build a distribution company that would help people who had been on my journey, which is a do-it-yourselfer from the time I was 14 to 19, doing my own off-grid projects, took my family off-grid, helped a bunch of other friends with off-grid projects, and then a long-tail installer. It started in an underserved rural Texas area. So I felt like that whole build-up situation was a really fraught path, and I felt like there needed to be a transparency vehicle for solar technology, which is get the technology straight to the DIYers so they could see what it actually costs, and more people could be creating savvier buyers and help reduce some of the customer acquisition costs in the industry. And at the same time, kind of be that funnel that moved people that got people into DIY and then moved them into long tail install if they came from a trade background. There's a big overlap between the DIY community in the United States for stuff like this and the trades. And so I think that there's a lot of HVAC and electrical contractors that should be considering joining a more diversified and competitive solar installer market, especially in low permit areas and easier, lower soft cost areas like, rural America where you have 30 million homes. So that was the start of Signature Solar. And the key problem that was being, faced in 2019 in the rural area of the United States, ahead of the NEM 3.0 debacle in California, was that we were losing our net metering around that 2019 timeframe. Most of the co-ops, municipals, and stuff that had net metering programs were hatcheting 2017, 2018, 2019. So batteries were a huge problem out here. And the price of energy is obviously a lot more competitive. I mean, it was 13, 14 cents a kilowatt hour. So to try to help people build relevant systems, it was going to come down to, could we get hybrid and battery hardware companies to create products that were relevant to the cost point that my customers were facing? And so I tried working with a lot of the technology hardware players at the time. So a lot of them had gone public. They were selling microinverters and focused on suburban markets or high price markets. And I think after about a couple years of experimenting and trying to get hardware companies to really focus on the people I cared about, I just gave up on waiting and started my own hardware company. So as an installer, I felt like I could scope out and understand when we'd done a good enough job. And then we just viciously reinvested all the profits into R&D and engineering and testing and trying to up the quality and capacity of the hardware we developed. And that was in 2021. So that's kind of how we went there. Wow. Signature is under independent leadership, President Brian Pascoe, and it continues a mission of trying to get out to the onboarding additional people into the industry goal versus fighting for the existing iceberg. Signature's a vehicle that hopes to lift the iceberg a little more and create a little more volume in the solar industry between newcomers and new development areas. And EG4 uses Signature as a think tank. We have over 10,000 phone calls a week for support and sales. And we've got a lot of qualitative customer feedback that I try to make sure I've got a hardware company that's plugged straight into customer feedback.
Okay, great. Well, so if I have an idea, I'll call you.
Exactly.
Okay, great. Well, that sounds like quite a story. You're quite the entrepreneur. So you had a solar company, you started an eBay store, and then you started Signature Solar, a distributor, in 2019. So that was like before COVID. And then you weathered it out through COVID. And then you started in 2021, the EG4. And now it's 2025. Let me check. Yeah, 2025. That's what it says. And that's a very short time to become like number two out of this huge industry by any metrics. And also, I don't know when I first heard of Signature EG4, and I was just like, whoa, what's this company? I had like people asking me, and I think some DIY or do-it-yourselfers and things like that were going like, hey, what about this company? And now I hear it all the time. So I'm honored to talk to you. You're a pretty good entrepreneur. So,
I mean, I guess it's more of just a frustration with the outcome of the technology so far. I just wanted to see the technology create, I think, the energy reality we could have. And I think that maybe there's just been so many different distorted noises in the market that have led tech companies to not really execute on the promise of this technology yet.
Great. Okay, cool. Well, I do have another guest coming on in 5 minutes. And so I want to make sure that we covered everything that you wanted to talk about. So did we cover everything that you wanted to talk about, or is there any other things that you want to cover?
Yeah, I'm happy to talk about what we see going into 2026 in the market and how we see the solar industry fare, how customers we think are going to respond to it, and what's really the opportunity, the road to dominance by 2030. Those are the big topics here at the company, Sean, and something that we're always happy to, walk people through and share our insights and agenda on that.
Great. And so maybe you could tell people how to find you, how to find your companies that you started. And
yeah, you can find us online if you're a do-it-yourselfer. We have several do-it-yourself distributors. We have Signature Solar, obviously, in-house. We've got a lot of other different thematic value-add partners that a lot of our customers like as well, which is Current Connected, Santan, Solar, Shop Solar Kits. There's a lot of them, Canadian Off-Grid, and, a whole set of them. Don't get me in trouble on not naming all of them. It's on our EG4 website, which has everybody listed there. And so find the distribution partner is right for you. And then also, go to EG4 Electronics and get the information on the hardware that we have. We've got a good YouTube channel with a lot of applications. And then also see us around the country in our road shows with distribution. We've got several different roadshow crews that go around, and you can track that on the EG4 website.
Well, thank you so much, James Showalter. And maybe you could tell people where to find you, or we could put a link in the show notes.
Yeah, I'm on LinkedIn and also X, as well as, I tend to be based over here operating in the company. So we get the feedback loop if you're a customer of ours, as is. And I also tend to be at the trade shows and some of the road shows. So tend to be around, but hit me up on X or hit me up on LinkedIn. And, we always love feedback, ideas, and opportunities.
Well, great. Thank you so much. And let's do this again sometime. I enjoyed talking to you, and I enjoy seeing somebody that's so successful in being an entrepreneur and going from, just like an eBay store to one of the biggest distributors and manufacturers in the country in no time in this solar industry. So you know how to make that solar coaster just go up, it sounds like.
Maybe.
So,
yes.
Great. Well, thank you so much, James Showalter, and thanks for listening to Shawn White's Solar and Energy Storage Podcast. Go out there and get yourself NABCEP certified, take some of my classes. And I know I've had a number of people from different companies that James is affiliated with taking my classes, such as my NABCEP PV Associate class, my NABCEP PV Installation Professional class. And that's probably why you're so successful, because your employees have taken some of my classes. You think so?
Yeah, that's been our good signature. I think that it's the largest staff of NABCEP certified trained sales associates in the country.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. And I'm so glad to be a part of that. And I'm so glad to have 3 different EG4 mini splits. They're pretty much heat pumps. They do heating and cooling, and you can put a string of solar right into them. That's just super creative. And thanks for making that happen, James.
All right, Sean. Thanks for having me.
All right. Thank you.